Welcome back. We are here in Melkweg, live from Amsterdam again. The third panel in our afternoon session of the conference is going to be interesting continuation on the discussion we had yesterday during the workshop. Lone visionary or political activist, this panel asks, what is the role of an ecologically conscious artist or art professional today in an age in which, according to a study by the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the activities of huge and therefore influential corporations shape the vast majority of the major processes that dominate the Earth. Mankind is shaping the environment, but the question is, what are the individuals, and above all, an artist or an art professional's playing field and role, and what impact can they have on the environment? We invited to moderate this panel István Virágwoldi from Robert Capa Contemporary Photography Center from Hungary. István, welcome. István works as a curator in the Robert Capa Center, and he's also the secretary of the Capa Grand Prize Hungary. He's also a cultural advisor, and he has a master's degree from Library Information Studies and Photography at Eötvös University. He's also worked in Hungarian news portal Origo, and he also lectured about documentary photography and photo editing at the Budapest Metropolitan University. István, microphone is yours.
And congratulations on saying my surname, which is it's a huge task. It's even complicated with Hungarian standards, so you did well. So thank you very much. Welcome all of you. I'll make a very quick introduction, only names and titles, and then we will start the discussion, but we will get back each and every one of you just to know what project you represent or what work you brought here to us. So at the table here with us, on my left, is Maja Anniki Savolainen, Futures Hybrids artist, meaning her work is exhibited next door. And she was proposed by Foto España in 2018 to the Futures platform. Next to her is Marta Bogdanska, coming from Poland. She's also a Futures artist, Hybrids artist, so also exhibiting next door. And she was proposed by Photo Festival Łódź in 2020. And two of our partners from the Futures platform are here with us today. On my right, Maja Dyrehauge Gregersen, if I say it correctly, director of Copenhagen Photo Festival, and Angel Luis González Fernandez, director of Photo Island from Dublin, Ireland. So welcome all of you. I'll jump into the discussion and I'll ask a question, and I would like a short answer from each and every one of you. So is the European community going in the right direction if the European Commission is flying us all in for this conversation from all over the continent in relation to sustainability, so at public expense, on public money? So in terms of climate crisis, would we not be better off sitting in our living rooms with our laptops in our lap rather than having traveled here? But of course, to do that, you would have to manufacture the laptop in China and ship it on a ship to Europe, and then put it on a train and then on a truck to arrive on our desktop. So basically my question is that modern civilization has so crisscrossed our lives that can we escape it or not? Are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future in that regard? Who will take the lead? Maybe Maja?
I think you asked many questions here. First, you started with the flights and the responsibility of EU, and now we have the purpose of the modern life, and whether we should meet for real, whether we should have a computer. So maybe we need to prioritize a bit. What are we actually answering right now?
So
just to make it a little...
Okay, let's narrow it down.
Yeah.
So let's start with the first one. Maybe if we have an audience here, let's ask them. Can you raise your hands who are not from the Netherlands? Okay. And how many of you came here by plane?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, are we sustainable if we are spending public money on meetings like this, or is there an alternative? You think? Would you be willing to do all this in a video chat rather than sitting here?
Well, for me, it's very clear that it's very important to be here. It's very important to be in person in Amsterdam, in Melbeek, with all my partners and all my fellow artists that have been selected for the platform. I think after 2 years in Zoom, we are kind of exhausted. We have seen the practicalities of, meeting online it has become very useful, let's say, and even my mother uses Zoom now. But I think it's there is something about I mean you can be frivolous about this. Certainly, meeting in person is quite important, and precisely for a European platform of photography that is meeting at least once a year is very important to meet in person. So whether how do we do that maybe is in question with this proposition. But I think flying to Amsterdam, it's good. It's good. You get coffee on the way and sandwich. I cannot do it by train if we come from Ireland.
But you're actually coming from Madrid, aren't you?
In this case, I came from Madrid.
So stopped in Madrid on the way.
No, I think it's kind of like a frivolous question. I think it's super important. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Anybody has any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I actually have quite opposite thought about it. I came here by plane also myself, but that was a thing that I was I was thinking for a long time, like what to do, and for various reasons I did that. And then I also like to somehow comfort myself and the guilt. I was saying that this is now it's also my responsibility to come here and tell the people who are holding these structures that there must be a change, that this cannot continue like this. Like if we want to meet, there are other means. And it's also possible, I think, to travel to Ireland via taking a train and a bus and a ferry.
And a ferry, yeah.
Yes. And the more people are doing, I mean, things start off from the grassroots, and the more people are using the other means of travel, the more these transport means are changing and becoming better. And we already see that now in the what has happened in the train traffic.
But you're not arguing that we shouldn't meet.
I'm not arguing that we should not meet, but also I think it's a possibility to do a hybrid. Well, we have seen hybrid conversations here.
There you go.
If I can make it a little bit more difficult, actually, I think internet right now consumes around 10 or 12% of energy. So it's not also that simple to just say we're going to just jump on Zoom and this is going to be all ecologically fair and clear, So it's not. So we have to really. We're not going to, come up with this idea here, but we have to come up with new solutions. And so also, internet is not the answer always. So we will have, and I think in the new policy of European Union, I was listening to this report talking about the newest ideas from the European Union on how to change that patterns of flying within Europe. I think, for example, in France, there will be a ban on flying if the flight is shorter than 1 hour. So you will have to take other means of transportation, and I guess this will be the trend in Europe in general. Also, there will be much more like train connections developed, so it's slowly coming. I don't know if it's not too slow. I mean, I'm quite radical in my thinking, so I think we should really stop flying at some point, and maybe we will have to. And there will be no choice anymore. We won't have this kind of, should we go or not? But we will have to stop going.
Could a solution be like regionality, so that we have meetings regionally rather than across continents? So like flying in people from the US or within Europe even? Or do you think then we'll just lose diversity in that case?
I don't think a regional way of meeting is the solution, as for now at least. I think that what would be a really important thing and very operational would be that we as a platform made a set of rules that we all can abide to. Making it very specific, where do you come from, how must you travel to be part of this organization, what would be our criteria for our talents. And I think that it is needed because we have to change a mindset. Because yes, I flew from Copenhagen to Amsterdam, and it is absurd. And I did it because I booked the ticket way back. I was super busy. I was thinking about not being away from my kids too much. But I'm quite sure that if it's implemented in the way we plan, the way we meet, then of course it is taken into consideration from the beginning. And that is what I think we should do in this platform. That we should start thinking that, okay, if we meet somewhere in Europe, we need to meet somewhere that is pretty accessible to everyone, and we need to have a code of conduct. And if I may add a little thing about the diversity.
Yeah.
I think that the diversity is super, super important. This morning we had a talk from Voices from Belarus, and I was personally very moved by it, and I felt this very strong, spontaneous urge to bring it to Copenhagen, a very free-spirited society. And I felt a responsibility to use our very democratic, free-minded place in the world to give exposure to those who don't have this luxury. So I think there are also other parameters when we talk about sustainability. Had you asked me yesterday, I would have said, no, we need to be more local. We need to put even more exposure to our local artists. But there is also this aspect about giving exposure to the inequality in the world. And it is our maybe most important role, period.
I'm really happy that you came to Amsterdam. Maybe there is a new collaboration.
I'll be biking next time.
Okay, 2 weeks. Just to jump to a completely different, not completely, but to a different subject, which is also connected. I'm asking especially the artists, but also you guys as well. Do you feel that you have to be political in your work to be included, published widely? So do you have to relate to sustainability and such notions that are discussed, for example, at an event like this? Or you can be more like a stoic thinker and think about the big questions of life and not really relating to whatever is in the public discourse?
Okay, I can go first. I mean, I never really had that dilemma. I come from an activist background. I've been an activist in feminist and queer and leftist movements since I was like 20 or something. So I came to art later, so I have a lot of different backgrounds. So I guess this kind of question of politics is always present, and I do it in different ways. I mean, I'm part of also a very political collective now called Archive of Public Protests. And what we do is very simple. We just photograph and document the ongoing protests in Poland, which have been happening very broadly since 2015. But I've also been doing that in the early 2000s. I was already then kind of active in the feminist demonstrations. The first feminist manifests were happening in 2001. Or the first prides. So for me, and then my other work also touches upon political or social topics in different ways. So for me, it was never a dilemma. It's kind of part of what I do.
Okay. Maya, can you add to that?
Yeah, I have very different background that is not at all political, and I would not name myself being political or activist, but what I think that working in arts is, I mean, that includes the idea of freedom and the fact that you are not dependent on anything, which is not true, of course. But I think that is the beauty of it, which means also that you don't always need to have like a political message in your work. But at the same time, I think that that freedom carries a responsibility. And when you have an audience and when there is a possibility to say something, I think that opportunity needs to be used wisely. And also art has this feature being very intimate practice. So whatever is close to your heart, that is what will come out one way or another. And therefore, even though I didn't want to be political, I still might say something that is considered political.
Okay.
Also, what is political? You know, I mean, it's a very broad topic.
It is.
Personal is political, as we know. So.
Yeah, true. Turning to you guys, do you feel like that you both have open calls? So is it probably, even if you have an independent jury deciding what is the outcome of the open call, do you feel that there is an urge to select artists and to show to society that you are, addressing these problems? So if these young photographers sitting around us want to be recognized, should they, address sustainability, for example, or a topic that is, on a higher shelf in the public discourse? What do you think?
Partly, yes. I can, of course, only speak for our criteria when we select artists at our open calls. And we don't have a mandatory element saying that we must have exhibitions dealing with climate matters, for instance. But it is something that we look at each year. Or if it's not related to sustainability, then definitely something that is of a broad relevance in regards to society. So yes, that is definitely very, very important. But I will also say that what is super important for us as a festival is to show the diversity of the media, what we can with the media photography. So sometimes it is also purely art for art's sake, and that is also important. I think it's a lot about how you frame it in the end. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Well, I have nothing against pictures of beautiful horses running in the fields. But I tend to enjoy work that is somehow critically engaged to some extent. Now, I think we have to make a difference, or maybe we have to see the span of project. Like a festival may have a particular focus in a year. I would say, artists looking at our history will see that we have festivals dedicated to abortion at a time which Ireland had a conversation around abortion. You will look at during the crisis we had a conversation around collaborative change as opposed to the constant moaning about the crisis. So you can see where the festival sits and what kind of conversation is raising, and then you can see whether your work aligns or not with that particular festival. I think that's the strategic approach that the artist should take, because I always say that you as an artist you can survive doing whatever it is, even if it's wild horses running in the fields, because there is a market for that. I just have to. Nobody has to force you to do anything. But if you want to engage with us in particular, then you have to be for sure aware of what is our work, and our work to some extent is always going to be critically engaged with our political situation or our socio-political environment in Ireland and internationally.
Okay. That was clear. Thank you. We got a clear picture. We will pause for short artist introductions, and this is the first one. I'll quickly introduce you, Maya, and I'll ask for the presentation, and then I'll give the floor to you to introduce your work that is also exhibited next door. So Maya Annikki Savolainen was born in 1980 in Finland. She's a visual artist based in Helsinki. She gained her MA in photography from Aalto University in 2014. Her works have been exhibited across Europe. She has published a monograph, When the Sense of Belonging is Bound to a System of Movement, in 2014 by Kehrer Verlag. Alongside her own practice, she has been working in various collaborations with One Picture Manifesto, Kinship Photo, Trojan Horse Summer School, and Manantai Collective, if I said it correctly.
Very well.
And if we can have the pictures on the screen, please, then I'll ask you, Maya, to introduce your work to us briefly.
Yes, thank you. Oh, now I can see the colors are very faded. Well, yeah, so this work is made during a residency in Riga, in Latvia, in the ISSB residency, and it was year 2018 when a heat wave hit the Northern Europe, and Latvia is famous for its beaches, which is, for me, having grown up in Finland, which is mainly, the coastline is mainly rocks, that is like super exotic summer dream. And so I thought that I want to do something about that and the fact that it's very hot. So I was photographing people on the beach putting sun cream on their skin, which is what we pale-faced Nordic people need to do in the summer. And I was doing that with a camera that had a UV pass-only lens, which means that it only passes the UV radiation that we cannot see with our own eyes, but then camera makes some kind of an interpretation of that. And yeah, when photographing with that lens, you can see that the sun cream that we see as white has turned to dark matter. And that is because the sun cream literally absorbs the UV radiation, and that is how it protects our skin. Yeah, so I thought that there was something very interesting about how we behave with the sun and what we need to do to be exposed to it. And since I have a biologist background, from back in the day, I've studied plant physiology. I thought that I want to bring plant life in parallel with the human life. And in this exhibition, there was this Hoya carnosa plants that are vines, and how they grow is that they actually seek for shadow. They grow these arms that are moving quite fast. I had one at the time at home, and I realized that in 10 minutes it might have changed like 90 degrees. And that brings the presence of that organism very, very strongly. You can feel the presence of that plant in a very different way than with other plants. So I thought that there is something interesting to put these two phenomena or ideas together.
Actually, this brings to my mind that for me, this specific work of yours is about balance somehow. That I like these dark spots on the skin because they are the same color as the plants on the images, and they reflect on these Hoya plants that you put next to your installation. And what is destructive to human skin is giving us life through the plants who are seeking the same light, basically. And we cannot even see this light. We are not. Our perception is not good enough to actually see it, and you help us in that in a way. So I kind of like this. This idea of balance because it rings a bell with sustainability as well. So it's all about balance, I think, not to be excessive. Just to go back to the first question a little bit, do you think that humanity will find this balance? Are you optimistic or pessimistic? I think that's a simple question. Of course, it's very complex, but in general, do you have the impression that I don't know, we will as a species survive? I mean, here we can see that the Hoya plant adapted to life on Earth better than us, probably.
With some parameters, maybe, yes, but it always depends on how you look at things.
Okay, and how do you look at things?
Well, about the balance of the humankind. Well, I think there's a study saying that within next 50 years or so, the human population will be decreasing because of the age pyramid. So that, maybe that, I don't know, maybe that signals something. Maybe that signals what happens in most populations, that they start to do this kind of a wavy curve around.
Yeah, but they say also that we are past the breaking point already.
Yes,
so even if we level out, that's not enough.
Direction is to go down.
Yeah. So
it will be the end of the world with no pensions as well. No? Because there will be nobody to pay for our pensions if we are all old. No, I mean, I think it's. I mean, it's a really tough question, or to foresee, I suppose, and whether we are pessimistic or optimistic. I think you can find entries to both sides. I think it's always good to be a pessimistic, optimistic, or to look at the good things. Given the gravity of the situation. Reasons to be cheerful, I suppose. But I don't want to. I don't know, underplay the seriousness of the situation where we are right now. I think it's nice to see the work of Maya because it kind of show us in a very different way, or kind of highlight something that we probably will see more often in the future. This sort of protection against the sun as a way, or UV light. I mean, Ireland is not particularly sunny country, but when it's 22 degrees, we're already sweating, and we have to use a very strong factor because sunblock, because it's a very strong sun. And you can sense that there's something wrong. It's already there, and we most likely will end up using some green product that completely makes us look like this. But this sort of visual strategy, I think, is very interesting to kind of highlight something serious.
Yeah, but I'm persisting here a little bit. Sorry, but science kind of knows about climate change for a few decades already, and now it's in a, now we are talking about it at last, and but people are talking that we have to cut all gas emissions, destroying the ozone by 2050. It's very soon. Do we learn so fast? Do you think that you can, as artists or with the photo festivals, you can add to this somehow? You can change even a bit. Obviously, you're not going to be changing on a global scale. Hopefully, you will. But can you see yourself in this big system? Or is it is out of the hands of the private person or an artist or a festival even?
Me? Oh, wow. This is a very broad question. I mean, I have a lot of thoughts about it. First of all, I just wanted to say something about your work. I think what I liked about it was that it was showing the human as a vulnerable. Again, we have to protect ourselves from the sun. And I think that made me think about a lot of things, because we are destroying this planet. And to be honest, I'm very pessimistic, and I don't know if we're going to learn quickly enough. And then I think maybe it's for the better. I mean, the planet will survive without us, as we talked yesterday. Maybe we should really go extinct. We're sometimes I feel we're the parasite of this earth. So I am not very pessimistic.
One of the great ideas from our utopian view yesterday was to let's go extinct,
Yeah.
But we didn't want to
compost, and that's it. And maybe that's the best. But I don't know. I mean, for me, because I don't do, I haven't done until now a very straightforward ecological project or sustainable project. So what I think for me is important is that we for sure are not able to change all this practical stuff like emissions. We can work on that slowly, but it's not enough. I mean, for me, the capitalism and the whole system is also a big problem. I mean, this is the system that actually creates the whole narrative of exploitation, of inequality, and this is like, we need to also address that, and this is what I think we as artists could do. I mean, at least this is what I'm trying to do, to work in that way, in this ecological way of thinking, of finding new ways of thinking, of bringing, like what the last panel was about, you know, bringing in new histories, forgotten histories or erased histories, be it the history of, you know, like what her stories are doing, or histories of other minorities, LGBTQ, or what I'm doing with animal history. So this kind of, you know, changing the dominant narrative, I think we need that, and we need to also address capitalism every time we talk about it, because we are just very stuck in many patterns of thinking. I mean, from the Bible, actually, you know, when we build the hierarchy of beings and the human was put on top, which is completely unscientific, because what actually science has proved a long time ago is that we all kind of branched out, you know, so it's not like human is higher than a bird. Actually, a bird is much more developed in many ways than we are. So we have to like really break those patterns that then were enforced by Cartesianist thinking, and what happened afterwards, where animals were, for example, deprived of soul, you know. So this was the moment in the 15th, 16th century when Descartes said that animals have no soul. And this was the moment when we could use them as machines, and people started, you know, using them on a mass scale. And what happened recently with animals. I'm sorry, I'm speaking from this point of view because my project is about that. So I'm not going to go into like all other details. So what I'm interested in is all these new materialist theories, of course, the animal studies, the ecofeminism, all those theories that bring new ways of thinking. And I love this quote from Donna Haraway when she says tentacular thinking, that we need to find new ways of describing what is coming, and we have to like forget about the rational mind. We have to do the real critique of the rational mind, you know, not only the one that can't it, but we have to go much further and find like different ways of engaging with the world. And there's another term that she uses, it's responsibility. It's like on one hand, responsibility for every other creature in the world and, you know, taking care of each other, but also responsibility in the sense that we're able to respond to each other, not only to humans, but also to non-human beings that inhabit the planet with us.
I think we could have guessed that you have a little bit of activist background
Really?
after this speech. Nice, thank you. Thank you for summing it up. Let's do another pause and go to Copenhagen.
Yes.
And I'll just quickly introduce you, and then I'll ask you to introduce Copenhagen Photo Festival as.
World problems.
Yeah, that's also, you have 30 more minutes to do that. So Maja Didehauge Gregersen is the managing director of Copenhagen Photo Festival since 2016 and responsible for rebranding the festival, but she'll talk more about it herself, I guess. Maja holds an MA from the University of Copenhagen and has worked in the cultural industry for more than 15 years. And a quote from you: "I personally have a very straightforward approach to photography. I need to be moved by what I see, or I need to be convinced by a strong and consequent concept." So I'll ask for the video to start to play about the Copenhagen Photo Festival that you will see in the background. And I'll have to skip a few images, it seems. Sorry. So this was a presentation of the other Maja's work,
Yes,
sorry,
yes.
in ISSP in Riga, Latvia, 2018. Oh, and now there you go. So please introduce us your festival.
Should I speak with?
Yeah, they'll lower the sound soon. There you go.
Okay, thank you for the introduction, Istvan. I thought I would start presenting a short aftermovie from the recent festival we held in Copenhagen in June this year. Just to give you, and those of you who don't know the festival, to give you a quick idea of the concept that we are aiming at. And this is not about selling Copenhagen Photo Festival at all, but I do think it's necessary to kind of give you a short introduction. So we have a festival center, the heart of the festival, and the heart of the festival is a 10,000 square meter exhibition park. I will show you some images afterwards, but you also see the exhibition park in the video. And besides the exhibition park, we have collaborations with galleries and museums and artist-run spaces around Copenhagen and in southern Sweden. So under normal conditions, we have around 55 exhibitions in total. What we do, what I especially put my heart in, is the festival center, and that is what we curate ourselves, and a lot of it is based on open calls with certain criteria. And this year we had 13 different exhibition projects in our festival center, and yeah, you can see some of them there. I think that what I did, you talked about the rebranding, and I know it's something I have said myself, but it's because Copenhagen Photo Festival has had like two lives, so to speak. For the first 5 years, it was a very open festival with everything was for free, also for the partners, everything. And we didn't curate anything ourselves, we kind of gave space. And it's a nice thought, but I also think that from a curatorial level, it's not that interesting. And I also think that as a festival organization, it's important to try and earn some money yourself. So that's why we start asking for money for entrance and stuff like that, so that we now supply to a certain amount ourselves. Also, because the money you own yourself, you earn yourself, you can decide what to do with them. And I think that's also very important to have that freedom. But parallel to that, we are based on public fundings. So we are a non-for-profit organization. And when I took over the management of the festival in 2016, I was really struggling with the fact that festivals have this nomadic existence, and when you don't have a fixed space, you have to deal with constantly finding locations and all the stuff that you gather during a festival. You need to do something about it. So there was a lot of waste until that, and it really bothered me. So what we managed to do, maybe we could skip to some of the images.
Sure.
So we kind of thought we need to have our own venue. And what you see here is it's just a drone shot from this year's exhibition park. And what you see in front, you can also, if you scroll to the next page,
sorry.
I can do it myself.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry. That one. This is our own construction. We call it frame, and it is built of old containers. And we have actually, we bought them back in 17, and then we renewed them. We tore them down and put them together in new ways. So we now have a 250 square meter location that is our own, and we have made a rooftop terrace and stuff like that. So the good thing is we have our own space, and it's based on recycled material, and we have this 10,000 square meters area that we can stay here until the end of 24. So that is, like, I think, a very crucial aspect of being an event organization, that you can actually be one space. So we have minimized a lot of transportation by that, and we have minimized spending money on location rent, whereas we can spend them on the content instead. And we have also secured that we can store our own stuff. So when we don't make a festival, a lot of those rooms in the container, they are totally stuffed with benches and tables and whatever. Yeah.
Just quickly, I'll ask the audience. We have some artists here, so let's use them. So let's do a survey. I hope Euroclass people don't mind if I do a survey here. My question would be if any one of you would be okay producing the work, your work only in an online digital format, so not producing a physical copy of it. Anybody does that in their practice? When you don't produce a physical work, that you, I don't know, you take a digital picture and it's a part of a slideshow and you think that's it. You don't want to print it, you don't want to frame it, you don't want to create an object.
So the question will be, who here base their practice in producing print-based work or no, physically?
Yeah, would accept never to print.
Yeah. So 4 people, kind of. Okay, so the majority would like to print their work in one form or the other, like in a book or an exhibition or... Yeah. Can you raise your hand who would like to be the work to be printed? Just to... Okay. I was really professional, no? Now we have checked the other part. Okay, thank you. So we still see the desire from the artists, you know, to have some hard copy of their work in whatever format that may be. So as a festival, what do you think about it? And also, like a side question, did you, because of COVID, moved online at all? So do you think that it's a viable option to do online exhibitions or whatever you might have, like events, stuff like that?
We partly did move online during the first COVID year, and this year we actually went through with the festival. But I like to say about printing exhibitions that it's, of course, I totally understand that an artist prefers that, and I also prefer, as a director of a festival, to present physical artworks. I do also think that the way we produce them as a festival, the way we actually print them, is very crucial to how the production costs are spent. And at our festival, we have some principles that if we print, then we try to print on permanent material. Maybe I can. I just have to skip a bit here. Sorry. Here's an. No, where was it?
I think this is already the end.
What? Sorry.
Yeah. Go back, please. Don't spoil Marta's work yet.
Jesus.
Backward.
I'm sorry.
We'll get to that as well. No, wait a bit, because you're pressing it too many times.
Okay,
again.
I have to. Maybe I should just.
You have to go back.
I did.
Yeah. A few more times. There you are. Oh,
Whoa, I'm a bit scared of this.
I think we've seen it all now.
Yeah, you've seen it all.
So you were talking about permanent materials.
Yes, I wanted to show some examples of how we print on it's actually pretty banal, but we print on debond. I guess most of you know there it was.
So
what you
directly.
see here, yes. What you see here is an exhibition we made back in 2018 with a Danish photographer, and we built those constructions out of iron. We built them ourselves, and we have reused those constructions ever since. Mm-hmm. We have let other institutions use them. And what we do is we print on debond, and you can actually put new prints on top of that debond. So we use the same debond year after year after year. Mm-hmm. Yeah. that's one way of setting up a principle of how do we want to exhibit. If you want an exhibition, a physical exhibition at our festival, this is what you need to agree on, for instance.
And then you create a new artwork as well as a festival, like layers of art on top of each other. Good. Thank you. And time is running, so now we already had the sneak peek of Marta's work, so let's go and check that out. I'll do it, and I'll just quickly introduce you beforehand. So Marta Bogdanska from Poland is a visual artist, photographer, cultural manager, and filmmaker. She studied philosophy and gender studies at the University of Warsaw and at the Home Workspace program in Beirut. She won the Peak House Talent of the Year 2020 competition with the project Plain Text. Her book, Shifters, can you please show it off? So her book, Shifters, that you can see in her hand, now was nominated for the Castle Dummy Award, the Luma Rankon Dummy Book Award Arl, and the MEC First Book Award as well. So, Marta, please give us a short introduction to your work that is also exhibited next door.
Okay, so I will briefly try to tell you about my project Shifters. The book is part of it, it's kind of a heart of it. The project itself started several years ago, actually, when I started coming across articles in mainstream media talking about animals being accused of spying. It was a bit of a weird situation. I didn't know what was happening, so I started just gathering those articles. Trust me, there's quite a few of them. They're super contemporary. What happens is that these articles are usually published first in local languages. It is usually in like Middle East or Asia or North Africa, and then they're picked up by mainstream media, Western mainstream media, I mean it here specifically, and published in English, French, German. And usually what happens, and that gesture was something that I think kind of started this project, was that in those articles by mainstream media, by Western media, there's a gesture of some kind of mockery. So 95% of those articles just kind of make a bit of fun of how can you accuse an animal of being a spy. I didn't know at the time what I was really going to do, but at a certain moment I realized I need to research archives, and that started like a 2.5 year archival research of animals being employed by Western military, with Western like military programs, spy programs, police, and services like Red Cross, for example. And I came across somehow a maybe Pandora's box in a way. It turned out that there is so much information about it and so much visual material as well that I was a bit shocked how much there is. And I also approached it in a non-conventional way, in the sense that I didn't start with a very traditional research, archival research. I wanted to really follow the internet logic and to look at these kind of images that Ito Steyer calls poor images. I don't know if you know that concept of this kind of bastard images that function on the internet as copies of copies of copies, and you don't even know if there's original. So I was interested in this kind of free flow of images. And only after that, like much later, I actually incorporated a much more traditional way of researching archives when I went into like a specific national archive or a specific war archive, like Australian War Memorial. So the first interest and the first spark was to actually research the repository of images, which is internet, and see how this kind of knowledge is positioned there and how you can, what kind of things people do with it. And I found out that there's a lot of scattered knowledge, but there's not so much critical thinking behind it. And of course, simultaneously I started I have a philosophical background, so it's kind of natural for me to also at the same time read and reread and go through all these animal studies theories, and then also, as I was speaking earlier, the new materialism and ecofeminism, and this kind of all made it somehow become a bigger project, because this project also involves a video essay, and then I also work in a participatory way. I incorporate sound workshops into the whole project of Shifters. I will just quickly talk about two main maybe points of the project. First is that the title Shifters comes from, on one hand, mythology, where you have the creatures, or like gods, for example, that could change their shape. So like shapeshifters to humans, to animals, and then back to gods or whatever. But it's also a very common concept in pop culture, in fantasy world, and films, for example, in the film universe. So I don't know, I immediately had this title in mind, and it also kind of referred to this idea that what is an agent? You know, when you think about the word agent itself, it's on one hand a spy or an informant, but then on the other hand, it's also a subject doing action. So that word, an agent, so this answers the question why I focused on that specific area. I could investigate animals in, I don't know, scientific experiments, or animals in mass production of food, you know, any other discipline, but somehow I was drawn toward this spy world and the military world and all these really crazy programs. If I give you the names, Acoustic Kitty or Pigeon Project, or they're just crazy. I mean, all these things happening there. So this word agent kind of very well knotted all those topics together. On one hand, bringing back this forgotten history of animals in wars, and I follow here also a concept of a very important historian, French historian Eric Barretet, who's actually coined that concept of history from animal point of view some years back. And he's researching this. He also wrote a preface for this book, and we had a talk recently. So he was super important for me, and he writes a lot about this kind of trying to bring back the experiences of animals. And of course, there's lots of difficulties with this because we don't have access to documents done by animals. Yeah, but I see it also in this lineage of thinking of bringing back these forgotten histories, like be it hair stories or the minority histories or slave history. You know, just trying to bring this peripheral or forgotten stories into the narrative and changing the narrative. So, and then why the book is so huge, I wanted to kind of somehow show two things. One thing is that there's so much material on the internet, and it's also printed in a way that kind of resembles the bad quality of images. So I wanted to be like palpable almost. When you take it, it's really heavy, and I wanted to somehow, in that gesture of just taking the book, so the viewer and the reader can actually feel it, how much pain, work, sacrifice the animals have done in those years. But I also wanted to, by repetition of a lot of images, I wanted to maybe try to give them more agency somehow. So we start looking at them and seeing that maybe they're looking back at us, and that they are not only objects of this history, that they also shape the history. They shape it with us together, you know. On the other hand, it's printed a bit like a bad novel, like a pulp fiction novel. So I wanted to stress the second element, which was important for me, this transparency of all this work and this sacrifice and pain that animals went through and their experiences. So this is why the book looks like this, more or less.
Okay. Thank you very much for the short introduction. It's a really fascinating work. Obviously it's strongly linked to sustainability, us using animals, like us using part of nature, in this case animals, for our own purposes. And I was wondering that I think there is a really solid philosophical background behind this work. You can feel that right away. But at the same time, it's very easily accessible, I think, very widely for pretty much everyone. And contemporary art gets criticized sometimes that it's too conceptual. Sometimes you have to know too much to actually just to engage with the work in the first place. And I think your work is really almost freely accessible for pretty much anyone. And I wanted to ask, and also this is a question to you, Maya, as well, as an artist, is that important for you? So is that a main factor for you, that you want to speak to a wider audience, or that just happened naturally?
I didn't really think that much about it before when I started this work, but I guess I have a problem with conceptualizing too much and building this language that is very often used in art and by curators that is really not understandable even for me sometimes. So even though I have a philosophical background and it comes quite easy for me to read certain texts. And although I don't have an academic career, and I would never say that I'm super fluent in all that, so I guess maybe I can say something different. The participatory approach, maybe that's what comes out here as well. I mean, the sound workshops that I do are super important for me from the beginning, and in many of my projects I try to somehow incorporate at least partly a collaboration. Like with the sound workshops, I collaborate with a musician or sound artist, and we invite people, and actually they create something during the workshops, some kind of sound stories, and then I put them in exhibitions. I also allow them to become co-authors of this project, and I think also with this specific project is so open, and there's so many stories on many levels, you know. I mean, it's fascinating on this very superficial level when you read these stories. We also have, I also collaborated with 4 writers in this book, and they wrote really beautiful texts, short texts. There's so much information. I had also textual research, and I had a lot of textual stuff, you know, copied somewhere and gathered, and we had a lot of problems how to choose something for the book, but we managed, I hope. So, I mean, I feel that this project is somehow self-inviting people. So almost everyone who kind of came to do something with me in this project became more of an author of the project than just, you know, like the editor of the book finally became the writer, because he got so into it that he said, okay, look, I'm going to write most of the stories for you. And we had like long discussions how to do it. So now my new project, which will kind of stem from it, and we'll talk about animal resistance, I'm going to collaborate fully with the sound artist I do workshops with. So it's kind of growing, and also even curators got into this project so much that they found stories that I haven't found, and I'm super excited about it, and I really feel like, you know, come and find things with me, you know.
And Maya, what do you think? Is it important in your practice, what the audience will think, how wide the audience will be?
Well, I think how I approach my work myself is based on the space where it's located, and what I think about the audience is, or when I think about the audience, I mainly think about the situation when they are meeting my work, and that has led to this sort of practice that is partly photography, partly installation. I'm also working with sound artists, and with this Solarifieds project, I was working very closely with amazing media artist Otso Havanto, who created these moving elements, glass sculptures, and that are reacting on sunlight. In the other exhibition, they were reacting to a soundscape. So I had a musician also creating a soundscape, because I wanted the people to view the work with music, and I cannot really tell why, but I felt like, okay, now this time I want to do this, and I keep on, yeah. So.
But you have spatial ideas, so you don't really envision your work on the New Yorker's front cover or something like that.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think that whatever I'm producing has to be inviting in a way that it has some kind of like that it gives an emotional reaction, maybe, or that I want the work to be inviting in a way that people get interested about the pictures if they don't get interested about the plants, but the plants are still there, and it doesn't really matter how they see the work. That is not in my control at all. But I think that it's important that I create the possibility to dive more deeply into the work. And there's also an essay that I wrote to the exhibition, because I thought that this is something that I had so many thoughts in my mind about this UV radiation and the plants and the sun and whatnot. And then I thought that, okay, I cannot really put this in an exhibition text, so I wrote an essay that was like in the space that is possible to read there. It was a history about the Hoya plants, how it is named after this botanist who went from Europe to colonize, did this colonizing gesture of going to Southeast Asia and named the plant after him, and that was completely normal at the time. And then and how that is coined with the fact that this lens manufacturer that photographers use, they have the same name, Hoya. So there was like this coincidence that these two things are very much in my practice. Like I'm a photographer, I'm using these products that are, well, it was a fun fact, but still I thought that it's nice to put these things in parallel to show how complex things are actually, and how we can take many trails of thoughts also and not always think like one way, or not always present something that is just this is a picture, it shows this and that, but that you open, that more that you dive into it you get more opportunities to different interpretations.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on to Dublin, to Spaniard in Ireland. I'll quickly introduce you, Angel, and then I'll pass this on to you and ask you to present Photo Island once again after Julia. So we'll have to do a different job now. Ángel Luis González Fernández is the founder and director of Photo Island, managing a portfolio of projects that include, amongst others, Photo Island Festival, Ireland's art bookshop in Dublin, and most recently the publication Over Journal, billed as the critical journal of photography and visual culture for the 21st century. So please, Anka, introduce us all of your projects quickly. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you. Since I get the mic for a sec, thank you to Futures, and thank you to Marina, and happy birthday to Marina.
Yes.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
We'll do a proper singing later. But it's great to be able to fly to Amsterdam and to be here and to just speak briefly to you all and to share a little bit about what we do in this little corner of Europe that is Ireland. I can go through a couple of slides and show you, first of all, I suppose, all the social media links in case you want to investigate yourselves. But this is basically the structure of what we do. We, over the whole project started, I founded it in 2010 as a festival, but there was more there than a festival for us. So over time we have created this sort of portfolio of events, and they all have their own identity. I want to talk about three, but I just leave this slide here so you can see that there is more than just Photo Island Festival. But I think one of the most important things that have happened to the festival is, as it was your case, perhaps, to have a permanent space where you can work throughout the year, because suddenly you start a program, a yearly program, and then you start to experiment as well, and to have you find ways in which you can support artists. Your creativity expands, and so the library project is Ireland's art bookshop. We only realized during the pandemic. Yes. I mean, there's no other art bookshop in Ireland, but it's a very interesting space because it's not just the art bookshop. We also host a collection of books. It's our photo book collection that serves as a research library for artists, for researchers. People like Yumi Goto came here to investigate a book that was published in Lithuania, that then it was shortlisted for the party photo. It's a very interesting space, and it's widely available to the public. We host a lot of talks and events there. So aside from the bookshop is the library, and we have a gallery space as well. In this case, we can see the work of Mark McGuinness, one of the featured artists. So because we had the space, we started to publish this thing that we call the TLP for the library project. The TLP editions, where we have a number of publications supporting artists. These are very inexpensive fanzines, and they ended up being a collection. So that's another project. The festival is the most important of the projects, perhaps because it's the most visible. And over the years, it has been evolving, and to the end, which I don't know if you can see there because it's very small, but it says the Museum of Contemporary Photography of Ireland, because there is this project that we started because we have another space now that is for a number of years that is only 2,000 square meters, not 10,000. But it's big enough for us, and we're experimenting with the model of the museum for the 21st century. So how that's we're talking about decolonizing. So we have the opportunity to start from scratch a museum. So what will it be for the 21st century? A century in which the digital has equal, if not more, prevalence than the printed matter. So that space started in 2010, where we hosted a number of exhibitions, and we invited key individuals like the Children's Council of the ARC. The ARC is a kids theater in Dublin, and they have a council of kids that help program this theater. So we thought these guys are the future. We engaged with them. They came and we had a conversation about what the museum of the future should be, because it's going to be for them. We presented the Nearest Works, which is our talent, and we hosted other exhibitions. We commissioned Hester Kaiser and other individuals to devise the exhibition. But I suppose the important thing is that this space is starting a conversation around that format of the museum. So I can tell you more or less where we're heading, but I will have to kill you after. So I think if you come to Ireland and you will experience where we're going. I think it's a very interesting process. And finally, our journal, which is one of our latest projects, and even though it was conceptualized, I suppose, in 2010 when we started the festival, but we were not able to produce it until the pandemic started. In 2020, when we had the option we were forced not to have physical exhibitions, and we had the option to go online, and we saw the opportunity to go to print as a way to deliver the works. And so it finally materialized. And that sort of gap of 10 years, it was very positive, because 10 years ago, it would have been a very different material. And we are really proud about how sharp and well presented it is. So it's a publication that looks at the meta-narratives of the discipline. It's not only looking at portfolios, but it's looking about what affects the labor of the artists and the museums, decolonization. I mean, there is a very rich and varied views, and we also are interested in papers that usually disappear in the universities. So we work with the writers to articulate them and bring them into the magazine.
Can I ask you a question? Because this magazine is about critical thinking, and it really is. I've read some of the articles in the first edition. What is the boundary of this for you? So would you publish, a climate crisis skeptic article if it would have been, better written as average conspiracy theory? So what is I'm interested in, for you, is there a common ground that you hold on to? Or where are the boundaries of critical thinking? Do we question everything?
No, I mean, there's a difference between, criticizing for the sake of criticizing and taking a rationalized position. I think it's very clear, when we get some proposals, because there is an open call that is open throughout the year. When we get ideas that maybe not aligned to our work. And again, we were talking before about the idea of the festival as a particular project may demand certain types of work. Well, this publication may demand some other types of work. For us, it's also as important to represent all the continents, so that this is actually a global publication. So we're keen on working, with individuals from all around the world, both in terms of writing and in the artistic representation. But we haven't had any situation where sort of like any crazy ideas was brought forward to us just yet. Some wild horses running in the fields, yes. But I think it is important to, as always, when you submit to a magazine, to be aware of to anything, to be aware of what they're looking for. Just the last slide, it was showing that the magazine is available in Amsterdam.
Congratulations.
In the beautiful, I don't know how to pronounce that, nuanced Centrum, which is celebrating the 54th anniversary. 55th? 54th? 55. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing for a magazine that has started only a year ago to start to find itself in all these different locations around the world. So we're super proud of our journal.
And can you just share even just a tiny little secret that you come up with about the future of the museum?
I think the future of the museum has to acknowledge all the conversations that have happened, in particular during the pandemic. So you cannot start a museum by having a director, for example. The structures have to show this idea of the post-capitalism mycelium network of structure. We truly have to change, maybe to a more IKEA-like co-workers style. Well, IKEA is not really, but this idea of the co-worker. No, on the structure. But then over is a really good, I suppose, lens to look at the museum in the sense that truly representing what is happening and truly being inside and outside of the discipline. So we be able to see what is happening, all those meta-narratives, as much as enjoying the work. So it's not a theater where you have puppets and you distract the audience, but you actually engage the audience into critical conversations so they can both enjoy the art and enjoy the socio-political context in which this happens.
But it's still a building, right? So it's still a physical space.
Well,
with a collection.
From 2022 to 2025, it's going to be a building. It's going to be inside a building during July only, and then we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Okay. So a bit earlier than usual with the other discussions, I'll ask soon the audience if there is a question. So if you have a question, formulate it and you'll be able to ask it shortly. I have a childish question. Like, oh yeah. I'm going to ask it as well. I was thinking you have a very diverse background. I mean, we didn't mention, but Angel is a graphic designer and you're a philosopher and a biologist, so we have all sorts of fields here. With all these backgrounds and working in the art sector, do you feel the art sector has the impact it should have on society? So does it really play an important role in, in the public discourse? Do you feel that you are empowered, or you feel like you are lagging behind the commercial television networks and stuff like that, and you cannot really make a big enough impact, for example, to move forward with sustainable ideas? I don't know, Maya, if you could share your thoughts.
I seriously ask myself from time to time whether the world needs Copenhagen Photo Festival, and I'm actually pretty sure that it doesn't. But what I do think is really important for us is to think of our festival, the platform, as a place to actually create inspiration, sharing knowledge, engaging the audience within the artists so that they also get more motivated in changing their normal behavior. I actually do believe that art can change the world, that art can make the world a better place. I do believe it, but I do think that the big challenge often is how we communicate the art that we are presenting at festivals, for instance. So I think that the way we promote the artist, the way we engage with the project, how do we choose to exhibit it? Is it accessible to the audience? Could we make a workshop where the photographers actually engage with the audience? Stuff like that is super, super crucial. So that is one part related directly to the content and the audience, and the other part is how we minimize the production of making a festival. And I seriously mean that if we in Copenhagen doesn't manage to stick to the rules that we have set for ourselves, then I'm closing it down. I really mean it. Then I don't think there's not a reason for having more festivals if we cannot be sustainable. If we don't manage to do that, then the world is better off. I seriously mean it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Cannot say anything.
no. It's
really.
not, and I'm also. I think that what you're doing, Angel, it's wonderful with this publication. But I'm also curious to know about the sustainability because, for instance, we have skipped doing catalogs. We didn't make any printed program this year. We have skipped doing big banners around town saying that now's the festival because I think I cannot justify it. So, and we made all these catalogs way back and it costed like hell. And it was wonderful for the artists, but we sold like 20%, and the rest we just kept on moving back and forward to each festival, and I simply can't justify it. But I hope you have more success, but I actually do think that we should discuss this production issue when we make publications, and I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts about it.
Yeah, I mean, with the festival has haven't had a catalog, a printed catalog in a couple of years. For different reasons, COVID being one of them. But the importance of enjoying the printed matter, basically a book, because this is a journal, it behaves a bit differently than a magazine. I think it's very important to have that enjoyment of the printed matter. I'm not to set it aside because of ecological issues. Obviously, we can deal with those processes, in different ways. Obviously, the papers that we use are being sourced in a particular way. We cannot maybe justify the global distribution, or that affects our carbon footprint, but that can be also offset. So overall, I think as long as you are aware of not only your I suppose as long as you're aware of your responsibilities, in this case, we can keep going forward with the publication. I think that's kind of like, I suppose, the short answer. There is a component of the journal actually that is going to be online, and we were going to do 2 a year, but we decided to do 1, so that maybe kind of halves our responsibility. But the internet is not a saint, so maybe that actually creates another issue. But yeah, I think this is always something that we have on our minds, even in our everyday in the library project. There's a lot of books being transported to Ireland. So yeah, it's something that needs to be examined and re-examined in an ongoing basis.
Thank you.
Can we
elaborate on
Please
this
do,
actually?
please do.
Because do you mind if I? Well, from my perspective, like this question of catalogs, for example, is familiar in a way that as an artist, there is, when not having immense funding behind me and supporting my practice, the scarcity is actually the way to become ecological, in a way that you just think practically that you don't want to rent a storage for the works, but you actually want to invent a way of recycling the work or building it in a way that you don't have to transport it from one place to another. Well, yeah, so this is one question, but what I actually think, this is like what you said in the introduction, it's like almost nothing compared to the carbon emissions created by industry and like what big companies do and how our lifestyle is actually creating this climate crisis. And therefore, I like to think that because I want to continue working as an artist, and I like to kind of try to find a way how to justify my own being and thinking is that I think that the power that we might have, I'm not exactly sure, but I hope that we have the power, is to create knowledge, like what you said, and distribute it. And then one wonderful thing with the art is that it has this halo of luxury, and that is like a lighthouse for people, like where they are heading towards, and they are craving for different things for the sake of the luxury of it, and art is creating that image or that thought of what it is. What is the way of life that I want, and what I'm directing my life towards. And if we have that power, I think then that is like how we can affect, or how we can make an impact into this situation that we are in. It's maybe not the question of did we travel here by plane or not, but it is actually in the contents that we are creating and what we are giving to the world as the highest thought and ideas that exist in the humankind. Maybe it's a little bit self-sufficient way of thinking about art, but I think there might be some people who see it that way. Mm-hmm. And then there's another thing that I just want to continue, because I think we are also we are a very like we are in the margins. We are like a small, tiny little elite margin in the society, and when thinking about this panel discussion, book by Rebecca Solnit, The Hope in the Dark, wonderful book, came into my mind, and what she says in the book is basically that the change starts always from the fringes, from the margins, never from the spotlight, and that is something that I would like to invite everybody to think, because even though we are very little voice somewhere there, but together that might become the spotlight.
We are sitting in the spotlight now. So let's hope this is the start already. But
can I
sure,
just say a few things? I wanted to bring a name from Poland, like a Polish artist who made a project called The Whole Earth, the National Park. And I think what is important for me in this kind of statement, it's probably utopian, but I think we need to make those claims. We need to make this kind of postulates that are utopian, so that maybe at some point we reach some kind of sustainability, somewhere in the middle. I mean, we need this kind of radical thinking, like Extinction Rebellion, and like being very elaborate on our demands and making them unreachable, maybe even, but because then we can, it's always this discourse, the public discourse works this way. The more radical you are, then the center somehow, shifts and moves. But I also wanted to say something about the question if we can, art can change the world and influence. I don't have a very, I don't know, I don't expect too much. I mean, I'm happy if I can work with few people and do things, but actually listening today to the Belarusian panel and Andrei and everyone, and also, I don't know if you're familiar with what's happening in Poland in the art sector right now, I realized that actually we have maybe more power than we even realize sometimes, because for example, with the Belarusian panel, we understood how important it is now to be able to, show meaning art here in a very broad sense, with even transparency and from protests and banners and all these things. But the same is happening in Poland now, when most of the public institutions in art sector have been already taken by the right-wing government, and we basically are losing our voice. And suddenly I realized how much that voice was still visible, and because now it's only this patriotic, nationalistic, independent art, and we're not funded anymore. And my queer project recently was just basically not funded. But they literally said that, they had money for something else, but when we told them the project is in collaboration with World Pride and I'm going to have a talk about queer situation in Poland, they immediately just wrote an email saying, we're not going to fund this. We're here to promote Polish values and Polish culture. So suddenly it all becomes visible, and maybe we do have more influence than we thought. I'm not super optimistic about that influence, but suddenly I see it somehow in a paradoxical way.
Thank you. That's a nice thought, I think. So let's leave this question there, and then let's turn to the audience if there is any question, and now is the time to ask it. Yeah, Menno or someone else here. Did you see? Because I couldn't. Okay. So Menno, yeah.
I just feel the urge to say something, and so regard as a question, but or as a thought, and maybe you can reflect on it. I think we need to be conscious about our footprint and about. But here's my thought. I think it is more important for the world if the art sector or the artists increase their footprint. So we pollute a little bit more. I see it as an investment because it would translate, or it would mean that other sectors who have a far more polluting effect would decrease their impact. And what I mean is if we spend more time on looking at art books and less time on consuming, I don't know, buying fast consumer goods, it's a small investment. It means, buying a book and producing a book, but saving a lot of trouble in spending our time on things that are not enriching our lives but decreasing. So, we are already I think we have a very small effect on the world, and we should have a much bigger effect on the world, and that automatically means that our footprint, is also increasing. Do you understand? Do you agree, or do you disagree?
I love to see the Dutch and the Irish landscape with less cows and more libraries and concert halls and museums, for sure. So that may involve also having more vegetation and more natural or local vegetation allowed to grow, and maybe that will also help. But yeah, I think.
But I think it's like Menno's thought resonates with Chris's idea in the workshop that sustainability has to be fun. So kind of this utopia that you're talking about can be a way of increasing the fun factor, and at the same time reaching some kind of sustainability goal. So I think it's a nice idea. So you should run for president, mayor. I don't know.
No, I think in general we need to. People like to spend money, and this will not change. And then the only thing we need to change is we have to spend it on something that we can enjoy for much longer, and then has a smaller impact on the world. And that is art. So instead of buying a Ferrari, buy art. And people have a lot of money, and they spend it, and they pollute the world. And it is actually so. I think what I wanted to say is we need to think more optimistic, more progressive. I totally agree with Christoph. Indeed, it should be fun. We have the alternative that the world is looking for. I constantly hear when it comes to the decreasing CO2 output that the oil industry said, well, we'll do it step by step. Because people do not, they cannot, they want to drive their cars, and it's just not doable. We have to do it step by step. Why? We can't afford to do it step by step. And there is an alternative. And the alternative, by the way, is also, I heard somebody from Netflix, CEO of Netflix, say in an interview, it's very good, we provide entertainment at home, so that's our way of reducing people's CO2 output, because they stay at home, and they travel less, and which is good for the world. Basically saying it's good if we all become zombies. And I think again, reading the book, producing really nice stuff. I also agree, by the way, that you just should not produce a book just for the sake of it. And then we are, have the leftovers in our storage, which is often the case. But but you could also argue, no, those are beautiful books, and we should try harder to sell them, to distribute them, and people, you know, we should convince people that what we do is important and it's fun. It's interesting.
Thank you for the thoughts.
I mean, what were we doing the last 2 years when we were not able to go out? We were actually consuming culture most of the time, whether it was through Netflix or listening to music or reading. Because you couldn't go out to do any, oftentimes sports or else. That sort of anti-production and culture over consumption certainly helps reduce our carbon footprint, and may help reduce the capitalist input.
Let's hope it will. And speaking of COVID, it was like a kind of like a successful experiment for global coordination. So before COVID, I couldn't have imagined that all these governments would actually work together. Not always, but still. Any other questions or comments in the audience? Another one from Julia.
Just a second. It was actually a topic very interesting to me, as I also made some work related to waste and landfill. But I hope I don't want to offend anyone. I just want to have a little debate. Okay. But I wanted to say that sometimes as artists, don't kill me, please. We think a lot about ourselves and what we want to show. And I think we forget to think about the audience. So I can agree with your idea. I would love to have a broader audience for arts and culture. But unfortunately, I can understand that somebody wants a Ferrari instead of a photo book. And then on the other hand, I think you talk a lot about sustainability. And for me, it consists of 3 important pillars. Sustainability is environmental, economical, and social. And with this, I mean that every action, our artistic practice, a festival, but also in other sectors which are not cultural or artistic, we can take into account being respectful with the environment, but also in financial terms, to have something that is appropriate, that it's economically viable, as an artist to produce something, as a festival to produce something that is actually in a limit, in a boundary that is achievable. And also, and very importantly, and again it refers to this audience in some way, that it's socially accepted, and not only accepted but also inviting, as some of you mentioned during the discussion, and that it's also relevant. So I think these economical, social and environmental pillars in sustainability are very important. And I just wanted to add this to the debate because you mentioned a lot of this, both Photo Copenhagen Festival, sorry for the name, I got it wrong, and also with the project you mentioned, sorry, the Maya? Yes, about the presentation. And Ish was sorry, but when you asked like who makes printed work and who makes online work, and again this is a reflection from the artist's point of view, but for me, for example, during the pandemic there was a lot of things online, and I just don't like it online. I like to be in this physical space, see an exhibition, see a talk live and not through streaming. And yes, so just something I wanted to add to the debate, and not to offend anyone. I think it's a really interesting topic, and that we can have a really interesting discussion about it now and later on. I hope so.
Okay. You touched upon a lot of topics, so I think
it's very broad. Sustainability. We talked yesterday about it during the workshop, and I think it's yeah.
Yeah, but thank you for sharing your thoughts. Is it okay if we talk it over a coffee, because this would be like another hour and a half, I think, if we went into detail.
Sure.
But thank you very much for sharing. I think at least I share whatever you said. So I didn't see any red flags popping up. So thank you. I'll have to ask you, Maya, because half of our speakers are called Maya here, so I have an easy job. What would you do if you stopped Copenhagen Photo Festival? Well.
Have a life.
Oh my God. I didn't prepare that question, you know.
Yeah, I guess.
No, I don't know. Save the world somehow? No. Seriously, I don't know, but something totally different.
Okay, so you will save the world. Okay, we are in a safe place then. I think I'll wrap up the conversation. Thank you very much all for coming, and hopefully it made sense to sit at a table with a Finnish, Polish, Spanish, Dane and Hungarian guy, and let's be more sustainable in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, 3M, Maya, and Marta, and Angel and Istvan for this great conversation. We'll be back in 15 minutes, and then we'll have our last talk. Thank you.